Hello, Sarah Payne here. I'm just filming this quick tutorial because I'm currently prepping for an embroidery show that I've got coming up, and I thought it might be nice to answer one of the questions that I do get quite a lot with embroidery machine shows, and that is how to centre your design for your embroidery hoop. Now this is a design here. This is an applique piece that I've cut out from the Scan and Cut. I'm not going to do anything complicated on this one, like export the PES files with the applique data to the embroidery machine or anything like that. What I'm using this is purely as a nice aperture to put round my embroidery. So once I've embroidered in here, I'm actually just going to free motion around the outside to applique it down. But for now, what I want to make sure I can do is put this into my hoop so that it's nice and centered, so that my embroidery will fit. Now I'm actually using the 90E here, the Brother 90E, the Innovis. Now this is the younger brother of the 97E. It's one of the range of embroidery machines that uses a smaller hoop, and that is perfect for what I'm trying to do, because even though my fabric piece is bigger than my hoop, I'm not embroidering around here. I'm just concentrating on this center bit here, and I'm going to do a small piece of text in the middle there. So how do I get this in here all lined up neatly? Well, first of all, we have our hoop, and the first thing you want to do is slacken off the screw at the bottom of your hoop. This is the same for all embroidery machines. Now you'll notice its first feeling is to spring back like that. So what I do to stop it springing when I'm trying to place is I'll actually take the screwdriver that comes with the machine and just slip it in the gap like that to stop it pinging back. The other thing we use is the placement guide. This is a plastic grid. Now bear in mind, I am using the forward facing camera on my phone because I'm filming this myself and I need to see what I'm looking at, which means when I hold that up, see there, it's backwards, but it's not, it's the right way around for me. So I have to make sure that when I've got it in my frame, I can read ABC. And the reason for that is, if you look, the grid is not, in this case, perfectly square in the centre of my hoop, and that's because the embroidery start off slightly off centre. So I don't want to put it in upside down, otherwise my centre won't be the true centre. So I need to make sure that it says ABC when I'm looking at it. The next thing I'm going to do is open that up, as I said, and pop my screwdriver in there just to hold it open. Now you do have to balance it a little bit because otherwise it's going to move about, but you can see I've just popped it under the screw and it's just holding those pieces apart. Now I'm going to kind of place it roughly where I think I want it to be. So I'm just doing that with my fingers at the moment. I think it's going to be about there, maybe over a little bit. There's no point in lining it up precisely with this at the moment, but having it in about the right place is handy. Then I'm going to pop my frame in. Okay, now I've obviously got stabilizer on the back of this already, so let's just move that because I want it to be at least be vertical, because it's much easier to move something up and down than it is to sort of twizzle, and that's a technical term. So look underneath there, get that lined up with my fingers, pop it back in. Now it's worth taking the time to get this right. The next thing we do is take our placement frame on top, and it's got a little groove at the top and the bottom to slip in. And first of all, when I look at that straight away, I can see that my fabric is far too far over this way. It needs to be much further over that way. So in that case, I'm just going to pop it back up again. Now it's automatically sprung back, so I'm going to stick that screwdriver back in, and now I'm going to pop this back in a little bit further over. There we go. So it does take a little trial and error when you're first doing it, when you're first lining it all up, but once you've got it in and you've got the horizontal line lined up and the vertical, you will be able to embroider and position really nicely. There we go. So you see, sometimes I find it goes in easier when I put the fabric in and then I pop my frame on top. Sometimes it goes in all in one go, because this one does have a tendency to drop through and get caught. So there we go, that's in place now. And if I just tighten this up a little bit, because remember I slackened it off quite a lot, and I don't want it to pop out just while I'm showing you. But let's tighten it, because now I've got it nice and lined up. Tighten it up a bit. Right, so I want to pull my fabric without it popping out, because we do have to get it drum tight. So as I'm pulling the top and the bottom and the two sides, pull them inwards, not outwards like this, because then the frame will just pop up. But I'm keeping this grid in there. I'm going to have to move it slightly. There we go, because it's getting tucked underneath. But as I go, pull top and the bottom at the same time, because I want to tighten it, but I don't want to move it. Right, tighten it a bit more by my hand, and then I get in with the screwdriver once it's to get. Right, there we go. I can feel that's tightening up now. Let's take the frame out, just give it another tug, because I notice here I've got a tuck in the bottom. So let's pull. Let's slacken that off a bit. Obviously, when you're putting plain fabric in, it's really easy, because I just chuck it in any old way, as long as it's straight on the grain, and then I can trim it as I need it. But with this, I've got the design on first. The other piece of waste is this, and I'm going to use that as well. So that they definitely need to be in place. Right. Now, if I pop this frame back in, you'll see that my design is centered in my hoop, because I've got the top and the bottom apex go through that vertical line just here on my frame. And then I've got horizontally, I've got the center point is about the middle. If I wanted to, I could move it slightly upwards, but I'm going to have my text going across the middle here like that. So I will line it up on my embroidery machine with the center point and move it just up a tad. But the most important thing is being able to get this horizontal line and this vertical line going through your center points. So now what we've also got with that little registration plate, a finger hole in there so we can take that out. I'm going to continue with my embroidery, but now my fabric is ready in my hoop, perfect, ready to go and all lined up. If I'm using plain fabric as well and I needed to position the items perfectly, I'll actually use registration lines, and with that I actually take this and I would lay it on my piece of fabric. So for example on here, and I would do a couple of dots, and then what I can do is when I'm using this I can line up those dots. It's a bit tricky to get it sort of moving backwards and forwards, because every time you move the frame, you know, your fabric moves. So it's worth taking the time, move it around a little bit, get it lined up and tighten. If you find that you get any creases, just loosen and replace the registration piece. I get everything nice and smooth and ready for you to embroider. Well, I hope that helped, and thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye. Now, I couldn't leave you without showing you the finished result. Okay, so what I've done is obviously I've just put this all in my hoop and framed it up. Now I'm going to thread the machine. This is the 97E, the 90E, but it's the same for the 97E and many of the other Brother machines. So I'm just going to take my thread, and I'm using a Gutermann Sulky here in red, because I want the text in the middle of my heart to match the fabric. Automatic needle threader, which is always very useful to have. So I followed all the numbers on the front of the machine, and then at the side here I have a little slider, which is just, oh, the thread's just dropped out, hold on, there we go. Oh, I put my needle, goodness me. This is what happens when I'm doing it at home, I'm not paying attention. So, there we go, that's threaded it. It's only because I had my presser foot up and in the way, so that was slightly in the way. So now we're threaded anyway. Let's drop the foot down so I'm ready. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the text, and I'm going to put in the word love, so in the center of this heart. So I'm going to choose one of the 5 built-in fonts. No, that looks a bit heavy actually. Let's go for the italic, and I want large, I want a capital L, And then I'm going to do a small, not a, you've got large, medium, and small, but I'm going to do a lowercase, O, V, and E. Okay, now I can click check on that just to make sure that I've spelt it correctly, but it's a very short word, so I could actually see it there. I'm going to then adjust it, the layout. Now, you saw how I laid out my fabric and that the center point is slightly lower in the heart than I think I want it, but it's straight. So what I've got here is an option for it to actually sketch out the position. So if I press on that, you can see it's going to draw it out. So I can see that it's centered, but I want it slightly higher because it's going to start down here, and I actually want it a little bit, I wanted it in sort of more in the bulbous area. So I'm just going to use the up arrow. Let's go to about there and then sketch it out again. I think that actually might be just a tad high, even though I've got a capital letter and the rest are lowercase. I'm just going to bring it down slightly. Yeah, I'm thinking that's about right. Now also what I've got here is the option. This will show me it's starting from the very center, and that's it starting from the bottom left. So if you're trying to center it up, just have it on this option here. Now I'm ready to start the embroidery. So the first thing I'm going to do is lift up my thread. Now some people will start stitching without trimming the thread, just leave it. I prefer to hold on to it. And then, oh, actually my thread's catching on there. There we go. And give it a pull, because the first thing I can do is just check that that's running through. Now that is not running through. That is catching on something. So, oh, my thread's just broken. So that's always a good way to see if there's a problem with your thread before you start. So let's go back through again. For some reason as well, I've got this reel of red and it seems a little temperamental. So let's pop it through again, drop my foot down so that a needle threader will work. Give it a pull. And you see it, for some reason now it's running through beautifully. So we're going to drop that down. I'm going to start stitching. Let's do a few stitches, get going. And then I'm going to stop and trim off that thread with a little pair of scissors that you get with this machine. And then I'm going to let it carry on going. And it's now going to stitch the word love in italics in my heart. The heart I cut out with the scan and cut. I set the heart shape to 6 inches because I knew that I wanted it to be bigger than my centered embroidery. So just tuck that out of the way and you'll see that it'll start to come through. I will actually applique the outside heart down with my sewing machine because I'm not at the moment dealing with PES files or transferring applique data from the scan and cut to this. I just use the scan and cut to cut out a shape. But sometimes it's nice to keep it simple. Okay, so the embroidery is finished. I know that because it says finish sewing. We okay that. Lift up the presser foot, take the embroidery out. And now I've got my little scissors that again come with this very sharp, right to the point, so I can cut off my treble stitches. Oh, that's a tiny one on there. Sometimes you can get a better result if you just bow it out with your finger. And there we go. And if I take that out of the hoop, with the screwdriver wherever I put the screwdriver. I don't know where I put the correct screwdriver, but this one also comes with the machine, so we can take that out. You'll see how nice and neat it is on the back. I'm using bobbin fill in this, which means that most of the back is the bobbin thread is disguised. There we go. So let's just pop that out. And how lovely is that? It's all nicely centered, because I've got quite a long L, which is why you don't have the O off to the left like that, because the L is much longer than the other two letters. But there we go. I'm very pleased with that, and that was using, as I said, the placement grid. And I'm now going to go and sit at my sewing machine and just satin stitch around the outside of the heart to finish it off. Thanks for joining me. Bye bye.